Welcome to Shakti Pulse, where we bring insights from industry titans for the benefit of our early stage startup founders. And today we are fortunate to have our Shakti Titan, Zain Jaffer, with us. He is a seasoned entrepreneur who co founded Vungle, one of the first mobile advertising startups that was acquired by Blackstone back in 2019 for $780 million. So, Zain, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom with the Shakti community.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to have this conversation.
Great. Well, I wanted to start off with kind of a fun fact that I read on the internet, and you can tell me if it's true or not. But I read that you started cold calling businesses from the yellow pages when you were 12 years old. Is that true? Which is incredible. And if so, what was your pitch back then?
Yeah, so as a precursor to being able to call someone on the yellow pages, you have to hit puberty early, which means you have to have your voice get deeper. So I hit puberty early, so people wouldn't know they were talking to like a 12, 13-year-old, that they would think it's someone sophisticated who understands this whole web revolution. And so my pitch to the businesses was like, you're reading about the internet and people are going to be discovering you through the internet, but you don't have a website. And I actually specialize in this. I can get it done for you. And then I would do everything to avoid a face-to-face meeting. And I would try to convince them to, email back and forth, have a phone call perhaps, and charge them for a website. And that's what I started doing. Building an agency that was a web design that eventually expanded to other things also, like SEO, design, hosting, content, things like that.
So incredible. And especially at 12 years old, like when most kids are go to school, get into trouble afterwards, sports. How did that happen that you became an entrepreneur at 12 and that you even thought, okay, this is an opportunity that I as a 12-year-old am going to tap into?
So, you know, there was a lot of trouble in my neighborhood. My parents were refugees from East Africa. We grew up in basically council housing, like Section 8 equivalent, and very rough school. And in order for me to stay out of trouble, I had this access to the internet. And my role models were very different to the average role models that we were exposed to growing up, where I did grow up. So for me, it was a way to stay out of trouble, actually. I never really saw myself as a 12-year-old. I was in a hurry to just get out of where I grew up. And yeah, age, your skin color, your your background was not a barrier for me. I didn't mentally ever let it register as a barrier. Um, Easily could have as the children of, refugees or immigrants.
Hmm. Great. And so tell us about the origin story of Vungle. What sparked the idea originally?
So if you look at what I did growing up as a teenager building websites, I needed a way to make money. How did I make money? I'd create websites, put content on them, and I'd monetize via ads. So people would click those ads. And when I saw mobile applications emerge, I realized, there's going to be an equivalent for what's happening with the World Wide Web, but on mobile phones. And mobile phones, I think, are going to be brilliant mechanisms to view video content. And so at this time, we started to see a shift in how video advertising dollars were shifting from traditional media like print, newspaper, radio, TV, and going to online. And that was the big play. Like, oh, online video ads. And I'm thinking, forget online video ads, mobile is going to be way bigger. So I felt that needed to exist, and we set out to build the infrastructure to do that. We ended up on a very, very narrow customer base, which was basically game developers.
Hmm.
So developers are building a game. They need a way to make revenue. They don't want to charge for their game. So show video ads in your game. And that's basically what we set out to build. And it was a huge success at the end of that.
Hmm. And how did you come together with your co-founder?
I met my co-founder in college. I went to King's College London. I did my bachelor's degree there. And I set up the Entrepreneurship Society. And he sent his CV in to join the committee. And I looked at his CV and I saw that he's running this startup, and it was like DVDs that you can watch to learn how to use computer software, like training videos. This is before like YouTube was very big and lynda.com was just starting to take off. And I sent him my CV and I'm like, hey, I forget applying. Like, sure, you can be a VP or whatever at this entrepreneurship club. I want to know more about your startup because I think you need to get out of DVDs and you need to take this online. And so I joined him, and I I sort of negotiated a very low salary for myself. After 2 months, they stopped paying me a salary. Equity was promised, never delivered, and it turned out one of the co-founders was embezzling money. He had never really met his co-founder. His co-founder was in Scotland. Like that was the beauty of
Mm.
the web back then. Like if things were remote. But yeah, his co-founder was embezzling money. Didn't want to pay my salary. Fast forward 1 or 2 years, and we were trying to sue him to get control of the IP. We settled. We did get control of the IP. And then me and my co-founder were like, okay, forget this business. Like you and I, we've been through the trenches. This was a failure, but I want to work with you. Like, let's do the next company together. And you know, I want to have a 50-50 split in equity this time up front, not, some promise. And pivot after pivot, we stumbled into the opportunity we did with Vungle, but it was
Mm.
not an overnight success. It was years and years of failure and hardship, honestly.
Yeah. And was it, I mean, to go through all of that, but to stick with this focus of doing something for, web advertising, was it a problem that you were so passionate about? Like what kept you going after all of these challenges?
At that point in my journey, I had just graduated, couldn't get a job because of the credit crunch, and I had applied to do a master's and turned it into a part-time master's, and failure wasn't an option. Like I was living on credit card debt, and we lived and slept in the office, and I think that hustle just kept us going. And because the TAM was so large, it's very forgiving for mistakes you make when you're in a big TAM. So, pivot after pivot after pivot, you finally catch that wave. And I really maintain there could have been 20 other companies you could have started during that era when mobile apps were taking off in different sectors, and they all would have done well. And I know that because I looked at other potential areas and they all did really well. We just latched onto the first thing we could, and we rode that wave all the way to a $780 million exit. Granted, some of these could have been $10 billion companies, some of them could have been, $100 million exit. But you know, we worked with the cards that we were dealt with, and we played them well, and it worked out because we were in a big TAM and we were relentless.
And so going to that point about being relentless, you came together with your co-founder, you were selling to advertisers, publishers, did either of you know anything about selling to these businesses? Or were you kind of figuring it out on the fly?
We were going after a new type of developer. These people are indie developers building games, and the traditional playbook of hardcore sales does not work with these types of customers. We came in very consultative. We came in with spreadsheets. We came in with, hey, here's a sort of spreadsheet that models out your DAUs and how much revenue you can make if you integrate our technology. Here's sort of like the half-life curve of your app. You may be number one today, but don't wait until you see a decline in your user base. Integrate us now and monetize, because frankly, you're not going to be number one forever. So I think there was no playbook. If we had taken the traditional ad sales playbook, we would have alienated our customer base. Our customer base didn't look like a typical brand publisher, working for some big conglomerate with lots of content. These were like rebellious developers building on the Apple ecosystem, and they were much like us. Some of them had similar stories, so it was very easy to relate to the customer base. All the sales advice I was told, I disregarded, thankfully.
Mm.
Like I'll give you an example. We hired a sales team eventually, transitioning out of founder-led sales. Right? We didn't do individual commission. We did team commission. And that was unheard of, and our board was very much adamant that that's a mistake. We hired people fresh out of college, and they were the best damn possible salespeople you could find because they didn't come with the baggage that you get when you're part of a institutionalized industry with here's how sales should be. I would argue today in this AI native world we're moving into, it's a similar mechanism too. There's new job roles being made, and you shouldn't try to just take a playbook that worked in one context and bring it to build an outsized outcome, you have to by nature do things quite differently, not just at the product level, but how you recruit, how you do your GTM, how you do everything. It actually needs to be, some things need to be fundamentally different.
What was one of the common bits of sales advice that you disregarded that ended up being for the better?
Hire experienced people. So I met with a guy called Jason Sparrow, who's a VP at that time, VP at AdMob, acquired by Google, right? Very senior guy at Google. And he was the one true voice in the industry who validated my view. My board and literally every so-called advisor was saying, "Oh, you need to hire like very experienced people who have consistently hit their quota. They're going to ramp quickly, blah, blah, blah." We tried that one or two times, didn't work. We also tried to hire super experienced people coming from industry in certain roles in product engineering, operations, didn't work. Like we had a very young culture of just college grads. So I met Jason Sparrow, asked him for advice, and he surprised me. He said, "At Google AdMob, we found selling to this industry, hiring people fresh out of college who are hungry." And I'm like, "No way, no way!" Like someone who's actually in the industry, who's so respected at Google, the behemoth, right, our big competitor, you could say, telling me this advice totally made me double down and say no thanks to anyone who gave advice to the contrary
Mm,
of
yeah.
what that was. Yeah.
And how long did you do the sales for? Like, where was the business when you finally hired someone for sales?
Do you know what? I brought in sales very quickly. Sorry, I brought in salespeople very quickly. I did not do the typical founder-led sales until you reach a million ARR. Um, we had two sides of our business. On one side, you have to get advertisers. On the other side, you have to get publishers, people that are going to integrate your ads. Right? Both had quite a different, um, a different approach. And I had no problem getting advertisers. It was very easy because we were basically pioneering performance advertising. So basically, I'm not charging per impression. I'm basically saying every install we generate, you pay us per install. In today's AI world, you have this idea of outcome based pricing. We were one of the first to pioneer that in mobile, cost per install. So very easy to get huge pre-orders. That's how we raised our funding. By the way, we went to VCs and we said, "Look at all these customers who are willing to pay us." The advertiser side was done, right? Doesn't matter what the number is. I could say I brought in 10 million ARR. Sure, there's no effort for someone to put on a piece of paper. If you get me 100,000 installs at $10 each, that's going to be $1 million, and I do that 10 times. Or they could have put $5,000, right? So forget that. Like that was easy. The publisher side was hard. Oh my god, sales cycles were long. You have to convince someone to give up their baby, their app that they've designed, and let you put your technology in their app. So I hired some people fresh out of college again to just help me do that, and they were much better than me. And I was just too distracted trying to build product, trying to hire, trying to manage investors. That our first few salespeople were brilliant, so I didn't bring in true any revenue. I was actually pretty bad at it. I felt
Mm.
I was going after the wrong ICP. I was going after these like tiny publishers. By the time we integrate them, their app is generating like no views, and I just didn't really have the focus and energy to go reach out to the world's top apps. So the sales team we hired did that, and they were better than me at that. Some of those salespeople went on to become CEOs and founders of other companies later, obviously. So we hired good people, but yeah, that was one convention we broke.
Mm.
Um,
That's very interesting. Is usually
it
you hear
is,
the CEO sets the playbook, the ICP.
yeah.
Um, so, what are some of the learnings you had from your early? hiring days, even beyond sales, just early first time team building?
I'd say that we were radically transparent in the company, and I've always been that way as a founder and CEO. I will I would radically just talk about our finances. And guys, we're down to 3 months of cash. We all have to hustle here. We all have to do things. And people would be like, "You're sharing too much. You're going to scare the company." Like I had my execs tell me that. Like, why are you sharing all of this? I'm like, because this is our company. I've given equity to these people. So when I said to you, I did team commission. I was really focused on managing expectations with early customers, and I didn't want your typical salespeople who just want to hit quota and overpromise. And so team commission meant that the best person for that lead would take the lead, right? And everyone's rooting for that person to close that lead because everyone benefits with team commission. We also capped commission, I think, at 30% total of base, right? So we did things very unconventionally, but we gave equity. And we said to people, like, we're going to give you equity that could be life changing in certain scenarios. And it's funny, when we gave offer letters, we capped it at $100 million exit. I should have added $1 billion exit because that was closer to what we achieved, right? So I felt like we did that really well in the early days, pre-product market fit. And that was key, because when you don't have product market fit, you don't want to give a commission structure that doesn't make sense. I also had a really hard time tying an individual salesperson's effort to their commission, because it's luck. Like, you sign up an app and they integrate your SDK, they launch, they may be the world's top app, or they may do nothing. The work to close a deal was the same. So I didn't like the idea that, our top salespeople brought in like $10 million a year, some of them at the beginning, right? But I didn't like the idea of putting a commission on this, because I couldn't tie that to their effort. It just was luck. It was like a VC thing, like a power law. When you have thousands of customers, some of them will do really well. And that's exactly what we were exposed to. Like, an app's integrated us, suddenly they're viral, and now they're bringing in 30% of our revenue for 3 weeks, by the way, until that crashes.
Yeah, when it first started, did you find that developers was it instant, product market fit, or did it take several iterations of the product? And if so, like, what was that big first partnership, if you remember?
Yeah. So first 9 months, we raised $2 million. We burned like crazy, right? No financial discipline at all. We're down to 6 months of cash, and I decided to almost like step on the gas and double the burn. So we raised our Series A with 2 months of cash left. Okay, very very risky situation, and that's why I hired salespeople, because I'm like, I suck at sales. I need to bring people better than me, and it worked out. So we started to we needed a critical mass of gaming developers, because advertisers were like, we don't want to spend $1,000, we want to spend $100,000, right? So at the beginning, we were literally subsidizing the inventory. We were literally paying our developers per impression, even if there was no advertiser there, burning money, right? Then we hit this critical mass, and then we started to make revenue. Then a game-changing idea came to us. We were like, look, we're just putting video ads in games. And one of our sales guys was like, I had a meeting with a customer, and they had this idea. They were like, why not take virtual currency and give it to someone if they watch a video ad? What do you mean? Like, that's not what we do. He's like, right, but like, talk to the CEO. This is what they're suggesting. So I meet the CEO of our customer, and they're saying, look, we've got this idea. Like, normally when people play a game, the customer dies, right? Like, the player dies because they fell off a bridge or they got shot by a zombie or whatever, right? Game over, video ad comes, and it's an annoying, intrusive moment. And they realized they're getting a lot of retention issues. So they were like, we have this idea, like, we want to give some currency to the user. And we came up with this idea called rewarded video. We were the first to do this. And then people started designing their entire games around our ad unit. Like, at the design process, people would come to us and say, we're building a game, right? And we want to do the rewarded video where you get, if you die, if you watch a video ad, you get a free life, and you get to revive and continue where you were. And my God, that took off like crazy. Like, our revenue per customer, our retention, insane. So that was a game changing partnership that quickly scaled out. You know,
And I guess what did you learn from that process of finding that product market fit, or iterating until you found this one idea with the giving more lives for the game that you would use to advise other founders when they're trying to figure out the thing that's going to make it take off?
yeah, I think you need to keep peeling back the onion and try to understand, like, ultimately, what does my customer want? It's not more revenue, right? It's something deeper than that. This is their baby. This is their game that they've made, that they've designed intimately, right? Don't just be one other revenue stream, because that's really easily to replace. Instead, become a design partner with them, help them with their core business. So we started to go further up the value chain to coming in before they've even built their game, right?
Mm.
And we then are truly aligned, and we then had like this consultative selling approach rather than here's our ad, go integrate it. Would be like, okay, you know, as you're doing the game mechanics, right? Maybe this is like three parts where you could add a video ad, right? You click on this area here and you can just watch video ads and get currency. You could do it for like, after they've run out of lives, you give them like only two chances, right? You're only going to get to see this video ad twice. This is the first time. If you die again, done. So you're not getting all these like users who are just continuing clicking on ads. By working with our customer to increase their retention, we benefited basically because we had outcome based pricing. We need our customers to do well. We need those users to click on ads and convert. We had to rethink our product entirely. It wasn't here's an SDK, go integrate it. It's like, let's implement this deep into your workflows. Again, a parallel today with AI. You're seeing a lot of companies launch AI agents, and now they're going into enterprise and they're working deeply with the customers to integrate into their workflows. The same thing we did back then too with our video ads. Like,
Mm.
embedding deeply into a workflow is a moat. It's completely defensible. Now, it's a moat that only exists per customer. It doesn't exist across the business. But if you're really good at establishing that moat, very good at coming in with your pitch deck and your designer, like we had people on our team who were like game designers too. So we'd be like, hey, we can bring a game designer here with you, or we can bring this advisor in, and we can figure out how your game's going to work. Totally different. Back then, that was never done.
Great. And you mentioned fundraising. Can you talk to us about the fundraising journey? At what stage of the company did you first raise, and how did you find the VC that was a fit for you?
So the true first money we got in was getting into an incubator. Back then, YC was big, but there was another incubator called AngelPad. And Cavo was one of the first major LPs and partners at AngelPad, by the way. Okay, it was Cavo, Gokul Rajaram, Thomas Corte, a bunch of like very well known people in the valley, right? And we were these two kids in the UK pivoting after pivoting, and we had this crazy idea. We were like, we're going to build an Android app store with video, okay? And we heard on TechCrunch there was this incubator called AngelPad, and they had one spot left, and they were giving $120,000, right? So Interwest Partners, where Kval worked, had put 50K into each company, and there was another one to Sierra Ventures, right? We really wanted to get in 120K to go to a US incubator. Amazing. And so we figured out, how are we going to get the attention of all these LPs in the fund, AngelPad? We figured out that we could create LinkedIn ads, and we could basically violate every TOS they have because the ad quality sucked. And here's how it worked. For example, there's a guy called Gokul Rajaram. He was head of ads at, I think, Facebook back then, or Google, right? At Facebook back then. He'd done Google too. We made a video that when you click on it, it would be me and my co-founder saying, hey, we're two hungry entrepreneurs. We're going to crush Facebook. We're going to crush Google. Send this message to Gokul. And then what we did was we were able to get our ads on LinkedIn, and we put Gokul's face on there, right? So if you're browsing LinkedIn, you'd see a picture of Gokul's face, and it would say, urgent message, Gokul needs help. This is not a joke. Click now. People were thinking he was kidnapped by some terrorists, right? And that
Yeah,
LinkedIn,
this seems like it wouldn't be
no,
allowed.
you know what we did? We put like some image of like DVDs. with a tiny URL that we could change later. The LinkedIn ads team would approve that image and this tiny URL link. They'd click on it. They'd be like, that looks legit. As soon as they approved it, bingo, we'd change it. We'd change the image because we were able to change the image, and we'd change the tiny URL to point to our landing page. And then we also hacked around with LinkedIn's ad targeting. So back then, you had to advertise to a minimum of 6 companies, right? And you could target job titles. So we targeted C-level titles at Google and VP level titles at Google. And then 5 other companies in Southeast Asia that had no employees, okay? And then we'd only run the ads during US hours. So we knew for sure anyone seeing this is highly likely to know Gokul, highly likely to know Cable, highly likely to know these other people. And that ad went viral. I think Zuck called Gokul into his office and was like, what is this angel pad thing? You never disclose this. Like, you're an LP in this thing and you're a partner there. And these 2 crazy British guys are saying they're going to destroy Facebook with their App Store advertising thing. So yeah, that's how we got the attention. And the founder of AngelPad called us and literally gave us a cease and desist in the form of like, if you take the ads down, you can get that last spot. And so we jumped on a plane to the US, $120,000, and then worked with Kvel actually, because we were pivoting, and Kvel sort of helped go in this direction because he was on the board of Flurry or Tapjoy, I forget which one, but his fund were both investors in both companies. So he gave us that advice, like app installs are really big, and this is sort of how you might want to approach it. And things took off. We raised a highly oversubscribed party round back then. Like back then, seed rounds were like a few $100,000. We ended up raising $2 million, literally 100K checks at a time. Today it's normal, but back then it was unheard of.
Was that all from US investors?
Yes.
Did you explore like the Europe?
Hell no.
Okay.
Hell no. I mean, UK investors and European investors, and still to this day, most do not understand the Silicon Valley mindset. We got like before we came out to the Valley, right? We got a term sheet for 50,000 British pounds at a 250,000 pound valuation. So like 20% dilution, right? For 50K check. That's ridiculous. And then the guy pulled the term sheet because he wanted to renegotiate. Come out to the Valley and we raised like a $2 million round, at a 5 pre. So we were planning to raise like 500K on 5 pre, ended up raising 2 million, more dilution than we wanted. But my God, like such a different world, So no, we didn't explore UK investors at all. But later on, we did take money from 1 or 2 angels who had were pretty much one of the few people who understood how the Valley works, and they invested in the Valley too. But mainly US.
What did you learn about investor fit at the very early stage?
So honestly, at the beginning, our first few investors, it was a lot of work trying to convince them, right? But once everyone's in, fundraising was a bit of a joke. It was like such a repeatable sales process where I'd go into meetings. At the beginning, my first meetings, they were like grilling me on everything, right? By the last few meetings, like the last 5 meetings, we'd walk in and they'd be like, how much room is left? Who else is investing? Can we invest? I'm like, you don't even know what we do, Like, it doesn't matter. Like, everyone's spoken highly of you and all our friends are investing. So investor fit, like at that point, it was coming down to who can close the fastest, and I need as much money as possible so I can get my visa situation sorted out. Highly oversubscribed round, and we went with all the really like well-known investors.
So Zain, advice for founders who are just starting out on their fundraising journey. How do they find the right early stage investor for them? What should they look for that makes an investor a good fit at that stage?
That's a tricky thing. You can do as much research as you want to do, but often nothing beats meeting the investor face to face, and it's hard to get a face to face meeting, right? So obviously do your research on the investor, make sure there's no competitive conflicts, blah, blah, blah. Everyone says the same generic thing. But it really does come down to, is this an investor you want to work with for the next 10 years? And assuming like you have the leverage and you have the benefit of choosing, a lot of times there may only be one or two people that are willing to invest, and you need the money, and you have to still take the money despite what the terms might be or what the investor references might look like, right? But if you're in a position where you can choose and you can find the right investor, reference check the hell out of them. And ask them tricky questions. It may be uncomfortable to ask questions like, how many founders have you fired? Why did you fire the founders? How many customer introductions have you made recently for some companies? Like the best VCs track this, and they can tell you, oh, here's some examples of where we've helped. Those types of questions are critical. And when I answer that question, I'm assuming like this is one major investor who's joining your board. It's not as much of an issue if it's like a party round and they're putting in like a 50K, 100K check. But you still want to find the best investor syndicate you can. And then, you also want to make sure no one's asking for special terms. That's something that really rubs me the wrong way, where some investors want like a side letter and, negotiate extra things. And with the exception of information rights, I feel like it's a mistake. Offer a sweet deal to one investor. It doesn't look good for future investors. And I think you want an investor who understands how venture investing works. If you're not approaching like a well-known fund and they're not easy to do reference checks on, be very, very careful because there's a lot of capital, we'll call it tourist capital, right? People trying to get exposure to startups and venture who are just the worst possible fits. Traditional investors from private equity can destroy your company because they don't really understand how the VC asset class works. I've experienced this as a VC myself in portfolio companies when they've taken on money from private equity or later stage funds. So make sure the VC investing in this really understands things. If you're raising friends and family money, absolutely make it clear to people that you can lose 100% of your money. I've been in a situation where I've heard those friends and family, when the company fails, still demand their money back. And in some places in Europe, like the founder's personally liable, by the way. So you gotta be really careful with how you choose your investors.
And how much money did you raise over the journey of Vungle through how many rounds?
We raised that 120K, and then that came as part of being part of the incubator, and then we raised 25 million after that. So we raised $2 million and 6.5, including venture debt, and then a $17 million Series B. We didn't touch any of the Series B money we raised, by the way, like not a dime of it. We raised the money because we didn't need to raise the money, and that was smart to do. But yeah, we didn't spend $1 of that. We were insanely profitable. But having the money gave me psychological confidence, to like swing.
Yeah. And you mentioned there is a lot of tourist capital out there these days. How should founders today think about when they're going to raise one of their first round? How do they think about, taking on as much capital as is possibly available to them versus however much they need right now in order to hit a certain milestone, such as profitability?
We're living in a world now that's quite different than when I did my last company because you can seed strap, you can get to market quite quickly. You don't have to hire 20, 30 engineers. You could hire like 3 or 4 amazing engineers using AI tools. So you can literally approach this as the one and done round. And in that case, there's 2 philosophies. One is, and many experienced founders will tell you, the best VC is the one that stays out of the way, right? That's what some people believe. I don't believe that. I believe you want a VC that adds value. But one approach is do a party round, take 100K checks, 250K checks, right? Or even 500K checks from folks on a convertible note who can make customer intros, but aren't going to meddle in your business, don't have any real rights. And that's it. You've got that money. You as a founder have full control and you take your company to the moon, right? The other approach is to find a lead investor who's likely to take a board seat, who has real skin in the game, and is going to care. This goes back to your earlier question. Like, you want to make sure you do heavy due diligence, reference checks. There's a founder investor fit. Not as important if you're not giving up control in terms, but I think there's a better value in having a lead investor, someone who can vouch for you, someone who can help you, someone who, if they own 15, 20% of your company, like, you could be a fun returner for them. They're going to go and do so much for you. And some of these VCs, like, you couldn't even buy their time. It would cost thousands an hour, and these people will give you their free wisdom and time and connections that you might not get if you do that party round. If you do that party round with a bunch of 100K checks, first, you've got a lot of people to manage, and secondly, they don't really care. They're spraying and praying, you know? So if a fund has like sub 50 companies in their portfolio, you probably matter a lot to them. But if you're dealing with a late stage fund that has like hundreds of companies in their portfolio, you know, you're not that important to them. So I think that lead investor is important, and that also means you should optimize to give them the ownership they want. Like, trying to cut them down to 10% actually hurts you. You want them to get their 15% ownership or whatever it is they need as a fund. The valuation has to make sense also, though.
Great. So you raised 25 million over that time period. Company was doing incredibly well. Talk to us about the decision to your exit experience,
Yeah.
which you had such an incredible exit. How did that come about? And were you weighing IPO versus M&A? What was that journey like?
Yeah, like, you've got me on the podcast because you want the raw, like, insights. Our board wanted to sell. Like, frankly, that was it. I didn't want to sell. I wanted to take the company public. We were neck and neck with AppLovin a couple of years before our sale. AppLovin today, depending on when you listen to the podcast, $150 billion market cap, right? So a $780 million exit is a failure compared to what it could have been, you know? So the board, this is a challenge when you work with VCs. VCs need to raise their next fund. If they don't have any high markups on paper, or their LPs care about returning dollars, right? DPI basically, then they may push you to sell. And we were a fantastic, fantastic return on paper. And they wanted to materialize that. And so we got an all cash offer from Blackstone, a private equity group. There were other reasons too, which I logically now agree with in hindsight, right? I mean, I agree with, but that doesn't push me to selling. I just understand that I didn't understand before. We had tremendous headwinds in gaming and ad tech. Back then, Facebook was always rumored to be launching their, ad network, and they had tried to do it a couple of times, and they were actually growing just before we sold. And the concern was, Facebook's going to crush you. Google's going to crush you. These companies have advertising DNA at their core, right? And there are at least 100 examples of failed ad tech companies who have tried to do this and failed, and they haven't done well in public markets at that point, right? So logically, when you think about it like that, and you're a VC, you've got a fund returner here, and you can see corpses of other companies who have been buried, and public markets don't get this, right? They just don't get ad tech. Selling was the best thing to do. Now, my competitor at the time, Adam Ferogi at AppLovin, he had only raised $4 million, okay, had full board control, and was able to take his company public. I mean, the next round he raised, I think, was like $1 billion or something, and he now runs a company worth $150 billion. That Vungle probably wouldn't have been that big because he's a fantastic operator, but we could have been a $50 billion company, a $10 billion company maybe, right? So that's how the sale happened, really. And we hired bankers years and years before the sale, and we looked at every strategic offer we could get. We had all the big tech giants look at us. We did have some offers discussed. Offers fell through. By the way, with AppLovin too, Twitter had made a run at them at $1 billion, and then made a run at us as well at some stage. Those fell through. Yahoo had made an offer for AppLovin too, I understand, and with us also. So some of these acquisitions fell through, and in their case, they had to go public. In our case, we sold.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, congrats on an incredible journey and exit. And if with what you've learned, if you were going to do it again, what are some of the key lessons, or what are some of the things you would do differently, either like operational or fundraising wise?
So I am doing something new, but it's in stealth. So I can tell you some of the ways I've approached it this time. We raised a monster round of funding, and you can if you're a second time founder and you're going back into a space, But here's how I approached it this time. Something I didn't touch on earlier was when we raised that party round. The deal was we need access to developers. If you're investing in developer tech, we'd love to have you on the cap table because you can make customer intros. So I'm working on an AI company and I want customer intros to B2B SaaS companies. And so I went with a syndicate of investors who can make customer introductions for me. And it is paying off like amazing right now, even though we're in stealth and we recently raised a round. These investors are making a ton of intros and it's working. Like our traction is going through the roof. It feels like the first year at Vungle again with my new startup. So I optimized for this. I took one lead VC who I have built a relationship over time with, who will bat for us and will help me grow as a founder, and then a bunch of smaller investors who have committed to make customer introductions, and that's how I put it together this time. I raised on terms and evaluation that I'm sort of like, I don't know if I would have invested personally at these terms. I never ever invested at these terms as a VC, for example, right? But at the end of the day, I convinced myself, look, I'm betting on myself. I am going to spend the next 10 years plus of my life working on this company. I'm going to swing for the fences. Who cares about this being a high valuation? At the end of the day, like my goal is to build something massive, like tens of billions to hundreds of billions, right? I know the investors are coming in at a high watermark, but I want them to win, but we're aligned. Like we're all going for a big outcome. So I did that. I often counsel founders not to raise on a high valuation, but I did the opposite. I did raise on a high valuation. But also I didn't set out to raise the money we raised. It ended up like Vungle. Like I set out to raise a small round and it turned into pretty much like a small Series A for a pre-seed. So if I'm giving up that dilution, the terms have to make sense. And so that was a function of how I did it,
Yeah. And how have you changed or evolved as a leader now that you're a multi-time founder?
Um, I feel a weakness for me at Vungle was I wasn't technical. And in this age of like vibe coding and AI tools, I taught myself how to code. I taught myself how to code before vibe coding became a thing. But when, you know, Cursor and Windsurf and all these AI tools came out, my God, I could understand the product intimately. I could figure out how to build the first MVP myself. It put me in a really, really strong position to hire technical talent. And now to translate a customer's request into a potential product or feature. So I feel like this is something that isn't because I'm a second time founder. This is available to every one of your listeners. Like, there's no excuse. If you are a CEO and you're not technical, go spend a couple of hours vibe coding. You will learn so much. It's not about the end UI and the functionality. It's about learning how long things take to build, the processes and steps involved. And if I were a more product focused CEO, and I think at AppLovin, our competitor, Adam was very product focused. I wasn't. I was very sales focused. Even though I hired salespeople, I was still the seller, right? Later on. Having technical chops is like a game changer, and I'm someone who comes up with thousands of ideas. And so it's really cool to be able to just like prototype it and, you can move faster that way.
And you mentioned that you also do investing in startups. What attracts you to founders at day zero that you think they have what it
Yeah.
takes?
Yeah. So I've stopped investing to do my new startup, but I invested through my family office, LP, Shakti, and these 10 other VC funds and made direct investments and then I ran my own VC fund. The way I approached angel investing versus VC investing, totally different, right? With angel investing, I know in like 10 minutes in the call. Actually, I know in 3 minutes in the call if I'm in or not, and it's like a one call close. I was a brilliant investor for people because I commit on the call, I'm in, here's sort of my expectations. I want a quarterly update and we're good. I care a lot about who else is investing for sure as an angel investor. I'm spraying and praying, to be completely honest. It's a power law game. I'm not an expert in any of these areas I invest in, right? That's my mindset as an angel, okay? I care a lot about the founder, obviously. Like everyone cares about the founder market fit, but I'm following a lot as an angel. As a VC, totally different. Would sometimes be the first check in. We would have to do a lot of due diligence. Would have to write investment memos. We would have to do reference checks, background checks, and know the domain deeply. And we'd have to look at a lot of companies in the space before having the conviction to make a move. So different as a VC. Sometimes we're taking board seats, right? So as a VC versus angel investor, totally different ways of looking at it. On the VC side, though, we wanted to invest in companies that already had some level of product market fit. So that would mean, a couple of 100,000 in ARR. And we'd then spend a lot of time coming up with a thesis. So we were thesis driven on here's sort of some areas we believe are going to take off. Here's like companies we've looked at. This company now seems to be doing really well. Then we'd go even deeper. Then we'd look at, okay, what's the gross margin profile like? What's the product roadmap like? Like it was pretty deep. Like we could only do maybe one or two deals max a quarter. Whereas as an angel, just make it rain. Like, investing everywhere.
Yeah. What would you recommend to someone who wants to invest in startups? What structure do you think they should do it in?
Neither invest as an LP. I'm 100% serious. Okay. Do not, you can invest as an angel. You can invest as a running your own VC fund, right? But I truly believe the alpha is with established funds who have great deal flow, who have great networks. And, you know, if you can work out arrangements with VCs that you invest in as an LP, because then you might get the chance to do SPVs. And sometimes I'll give you an example. Let's say a venture fund invests in a startup and it's oversubscribed, right? They may have carved out an SPV in a highly oversubscribed round to let you invest in. Like they have done so much due diligence probably to get to that brilliant. Unless you want to be a career VC and join an established VC fund, starting your own VC fund like I did was really tough. I learned a lot, made a lot of mistakes. But I firmly believe, and I don't just say this with VC, I believe this generally for anyone who's made a lot of wealth and you create like your own family office structure, invest in third party LPs. Sorry, invest as an LP in third party GPs rather than trying to do everything yourself. The odds are stacked against you because professional VCs are professional for a reason. If you join a VC fund, many top VC funds won't let you make any investments for at least the first 1 or 2 years. So you can learn how to look at deals and, you'll make a lot of mistakes. Like I was overly positive having a big exit from Vungle, thinking all companies are going to be like that. Rude awakening when 90% of the companies failed, So yeah, I think neither. Invest as an LP is my advice.
And as we wrap, Zain, what are you most excited for starting out your founder journey with a new company?
Honestly, I finally have something to do. I feel useful. I felt so depressed after selling the company, looking for a purpose. I've tried retirement. I've had midlife crises where I start mixed martial arts and then I get injured and have surgeries. I find new hobbies. I try traveling. None of that gives me fulfillment. And running a VC fund was the closest I got to it because you get to live vicariously through the ups and downs of founders. But I'm not. I didn't enjoy running a small fund. If I ran a fund in the future, it has to be a big fund because I don't like giving all this value to get 2 or 3% ownership in a company, right? But now every day I wake up, I can't even sleep to be honest, right? I'm coming up with ideas at nighttime. I can't stop working on this idea that I'm working on. I feel alive, and I've sort of just had to surrender to the fact that this is how I am. Like this is my purpose, and I haven't felt like this aligned with my core purpose since I had my last company. But it took sort of a divorce or a break from startups, to realize like, okay, I'm going to explore other things. No, actually, this is what makes me happy, just building and doing things.
Very exciting. Well, best of luck on your new endeavor and look forward to hearing more about it. And thanks so much for joining us today on Shakti Pulse and for being a Shakti Titan and helping to mentor the next generation of incredible founders like yourself.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. And it's been amazing to be part of the Shakti Network.